Hello, my name's Kingsley Singleton and welcome to this Photoshop and Elements video lesson from Digital Photo, the UK's best-selling photography and imaging magazine. If you've taken a glance at this month's special guide to shooting portraits in the magazine, you'll have seen that we kick things off by challenging you to pick a subject. Not a particularly big ask on the face of it, but it's in this selecting of a subject and concentrating on their character that you're going to discover all about how to get the best results from any portrait shoot. The selecting of a subject and thinking about how you're going to get their character across in a picture will lead us on to how to correctly compose your portraits and get the clearest possible results with your camera and software. So from the pot of possible subjects, I drew the challenge of pets, and that led me on to Maisie the boxer dog here. Fortunately, many of the simple tricks we use on people pictures can also be applied to our four-legged friends, such as making sure their eyes are at the heart of the shot, that there are no distractions to take your attention away from them, and that they're really nicely lit. So here we've used some levels adjustment layers along with the dodge tool to perk up the exposure, and also employed the clone stamp tool to clean up the edges of the frame and give us this nice simple background that's really going to show off the subject well. Okay, let's show how it's done just by closing down our finished image and opening up the start image. That's Maisie.jpg, which you'll find on this month's CD. So the first thing we need to do is bring up our Layers palette on screen. And if you can't see yours, just come up to Window and down to Layers. And then we're going to take some steps to brighten up our exposure because it's looking a little bit dull and grey at the moment, and we're going to do that using a Levels adjustment layer. So in the Layers palette, just find the small half black and half white circle. That's the Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer icon. In some versions you'll find it at the bottom, and in others it'll be at the top. But when you give it a click, you'll get this menu come up, and from that we're going to pick Levels. Now because we want to brighten things up a bit, I'm going to need to drag our white point slider towards the left, and you'll see that when I do that, it's just like turning on a light. Everything gets brighter. We don't want to drag it too far though, or we'll have sort of burnt out areas of the image where we lose detail. Something around 230 as an input level should be fine, and you can see what happens if I drag it further than that. We indeed get this burnout. We start to lose all this detail on the dog's coat, and there's a quick and easy way just to really tell how the levels adjustments are affecting the image. Just hold down the Alt key on the keyboard when you move that slider, and anywhere you see those white areas, that's where you're losing detail. So we want to keep it up there at about 230. And then to just lighten up those midtones as well, we're going to click and drag the gamma slider, that's the middle slider, over to about 1.3. Click OK to come out of the Levels palette. And if I just click on and off the eye icon next to our Levels adjustment layer there, you can see that immediately we've had a really kind of positive effect on the shot. It's a lot brighter, and we're starting to show off the white coat of Maisie really nicely. Next up, I want to make another Levels adjustment, but this time I want to concentrate it on the eye here, just bringing out some of the detail there and lighting it up. So what I'm going to do is first make a selection of it, just using the polygonal lasso tool here in the toolbox. Just going to click roughly around where I want the lightening to take place. And then we'll just come up to the Refine Edge button up here in the options bar, give that a click, and then we can apply some softness to the edge of our selected area, just making sure that the levels adjustment that we're going to make has a nice soft blend around the edge. I'm going to set the feather radius down at about 40 pixels, actually a little bit less than that, down at about 30 pixels. That should be okay. So once you've set that up, just click OK. Then before we add our second levels adjustment layer, just click on the background, and then it's back down to the small half black and half white circle, pick Levels again, and this time when our Levels adjustment layer appears in the Layers palette there, you see we get a mask, so it's only those white areas that are going to be affected by our Levels adjustment. And in here, I'm just going to click and drag that white point slider down to about 130. And as you can see, that's kind of lightening up the white of the eye and also this catch light that's in it really well. So click OK to exit the Levels palette there, and in just those two simple steps, just clicking off the eye icons here, you can see that we've had a tremendous impact on the image. We've gone from what was on reflection quite a kind of a gloomy and dull starting point to a really nicely exposed pet portrait. Okay, so that's looking really good, but I'm still a little bit concerned by this clutter that's appearing. Due to shooting with a wide-angle lens, it's virtually impossible to stop things creeping into the edge of the frame, especially if you're shooting in someone's living room. But we can very quickly and easily deal with these using the clone stamp tool. So what I want to do here is actually clone parts of the existing background so they cover up the distractions around the edge of the frame. But to give us a little bit of extra flexibility, I'm going to clone these areas onto a new layer. So we'll first just click on the background layer again in the Layers palette, then come up to Layer, down to New and pick Layer. We'll just click OK when that dialog box appears, and then we can select the Clone Stamp tool from the toolbox. Once you've clicked on that, have a quick look up in the options bar where we're going to change the size of the Clone Stamp tool to 400 pixels. Something around there should be okay. Make sure that its hardness is set to 0, then that its mode is normal, its opacity is 100%, and then over here next to where it says Sample, click on the downward facing arrow and select Current and Below. Now the reason for this is that if we leave it on Current Layer and we try to select an area using the Alt key and clone away, we don't get any pixels appearing. That's because our current layer is empty. You can tell that just by looking at the checker effect there in the Layers palette. Equally, if we select all layers and try and clone, we get the cloned pixels appearing lighter. That's because they're taking information from the adjustment layers above them. So I'll just press Ctrl, Shift and Z a couple of times to get rid of those cloned pixels, and then next to Sample we'll select Current and Below. So now when I press the Alt key down and hold it down on the keyboard there, sample a clean area of the background and paint in, we get just the result that we're looking for. A nice consistent background that's really going to let our subjects stand out nicely. Now when you get up to this area around the top right of the frame there, what you can do is just start sampling pixels from the opposite side of the image. They're all quite blurred up there, so it doesn't matter too much what you're sampling, and slowly but surely we'll create a nice uncluttered background that our subject is sitting against. And there's just one small blob on the left hand side I can see there. I think that's a kind of a dog treat that went missing, so we'll just get rid of that. Now as I said before, cloning onto this separate layer gives us a bit more flexibility. It means that if we make mistakes, we can use a tool like the eraser tool to just kind of get rid of those pixels that we've cloned in. But if you're following this tutorial using Photoshop Elements software, you're better off just cloning directly onto the background layer, or in fact a copy of the background layer. I'll show you how to do that in a moment, because the same sampling options aren't in Elements. So if I just switch into Elements for a moment, there we go, Element 7 we're in here, and to make a duplicate of the background layer we'll just simply click and drag it into the new layer icon. Either that, or we can just press Ctrl and J on the keyboard to copy it. And then that's the one we'll be cloning on, so select the Clone Stamp tool again, and we can do just as we did before, making sure this time up in the options bar that all layers is unticked, otherwise you'll get the same kind of lightening effect that we saw in Photoshop. Just undo that with Ctrl and Z, and as I said, just in the same way we can quickly and easily get rid of those distracting elements in the background. Just copying from the top left there as we did in Photoshop, just the same really, and eventually we'll have a nice clutter-free background to work with. Okay, so that's how it's done in Elements. I'm now going to switch back into Photoshop CS3, and we'll take a look at the last part of the tutorial, where we're just going to continue to work the contrast a little bit, just brightening Maisie's coat, making it stand out a little bit more. Lovely kind of a white coat she's got, when she's not covered in mud, that is. So to do that, we'll create another new layer. So it's back up to Layer, down to New and pick Layer. Layer 2 as a name is fine. And then within the Layers palette, we're just going to click and drag that to the top of the palette. As you can see, just like Layer 1, when we created it, it's empty. We can tell that by the checkers. And what we're going to do to improve the contrast a little more is we're going to use the Dodge tool just to pick out some more of those highlights on her coat. But before we do that, we're just going to kind of collapse all of our layers into a single one to work on. And we'll do that by first holding down the Alt key on the keyboard, coming up to the Layer menu, holding down the left mouse button there, coming all the way down to Merge Visible, And then when you do that, all of those layers will be merged into layer 2, which we've just created. Now, as I said, we're going to use the dodge tool here, so we'll just come over to the burn tool in the toolbox, hold down the left mouse button and select it from the flyout list. And then up in the options bar, we'll set its size to about 400 pixels. Make sure the hardness is down at 0. Set the range to highlight, and then make sure that that exposure is down about 2 or 3%. And that just lets us build up the dodging effect nice and slowly. So once all that's present and correct, we can hold down the left mouse button and just start running the tool over some of those darker areas of her coat. Now, we don't want to go too near any of these highlight areas, like on her ear and her forehead and down on her back there. We're just trying to kind of even up some of the parts of the image just by bringing them up slightly. And I'm just going to reduce the size of the brush here just by using the keyboard shortcut. That's the left square bracket key. Just knocking it down in size a little bit, and then I'm just going to use the dodge tool on her nose here, just kind of bringing out some of those highlights that are there, just increasing the detail in our portrait. That's looking quite good. And then I'm also going to do the same on her eye, so we'll zoom right in on that. Back to the dodge tool again, just knock that brush size down a little bit more, and then we can just bring out some more of those details in her eye. Just all these nice catch lights that are in there. Just making the eye seem really alive, giving it lots of sparkle. That's looking pretty good. So we'll come back to a full view. And then if I just click layer 2, our dodging layer, on and off, you can see the quite subtle improvements that we've made there, just bringing out some of those highlights on her chest and on her nose and in the detail in her eye. Okay, so that's all there is to it really. We've gone from quite a dull and drab starting point, and just by building up these different adjustments in the layers palette, we've created a really striking, yet clean and simple pet portrait. So take a look in the magazine, you'll see how we shot this portrait using that wide-angle lens that I mentioned some minutes ago. But make sure you take that portrait challenge yourself too, because it really is a great way of improving your pictures of friends and family and even your pets. Okay, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time.